So hello everyone and welcome to this Fliplet webinar. The title for today is 5 impactful tips to accelerate your enterprise's innovation success today. So my name's Lisa Broom. I'm from the marketing department here at Fliplet and I'm joined by my 2 colleagues, Kyle and Dave. They work with our lovely existing and future clients on a daily basis, but you know who we're all here to see. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our guest speaker. This is Curt Carlson. Now, I've got a nice little blurb about Carl I'd like to tell you about. He's a pioneer in the development and use of innovation best practices, and he's an evangelist for innovation. With his Innovation for Impact, I4I process, his organization has become the leader for innovation in Silicon Valley, and we'll hear about all of this in just a moment. He's also an award-winning author who, having co-authored the book Innovation, the 5 Disciplines for Creating What Customers Want, which was selected for Business Week as one of the top 10 business books. And Curt and his value creation framework have emerged as one of the biggest innovation minds in the world. He was selected to serve on President Obama's National Advisory Council on Innovation. Believe me, if you have time, it is a very interesting story. Please do ask Curt if you ever get the chance. And he's also been a senior advisor to the governments of Malaysia, Japan, Sweden, Denmark, Lithuania, and Finland. So a very busy man, very, very busy. So we're very, very fortunate to have you here today. So welcome, Curt. Thank you for joining us. So the agenda for today, we're looking at innovation challenges, the success stories of implementing the 5 tips, and obviously the 5 tips, that's what you're all here for, to accelerate innovation success. And then right towards the end, we'll have an introduction into and an introduction to Fliplet and the special giveaway that we have for today. And then we're finishing up with a Q&A. So do post any questions you have during the webinar in the chat, as you've already done. You've all proven that you can do that already with your telling us where you're from. So please do let us know any questions you have for any of the speakers as we go through. We appreciate if you could please stay on mute throughout the presentation. And at the end, we'll also collect some feedback, which would be great to hear what you've thought of the session, because we can always improve. We're aiming for about 45 minutes to 1 hour for today's webinar. We're now going to talk through the challenges innovators face today. So in 2022, what would a webinar be without some stats? Innovation this year is more important than ever. I'm sure you'll agree. In a recent McKinsey study, it was proven that mastering innovation skills can increase the financial results of an organization by nearly 2.5 times. But then another study done by Insider Intelligence, it reports, when asking real innovators, that they're reporting that there's a 27% of them are reporting a lack of resources, 20% of them are reporting a lack of support from CEO or board members, and 19% cited that a lack of buy-in across the organization was really limiting them being able to innovate quickly and meet business goals. When we got a great poll for you in just a moment that Curt's running, and it'd be interesting to see if you all feel the same way as these reports do. I'll now hand over to Kyle, who's just going to take us through very quickly what Fliplet's experience is with clients.
Thank you, Lisa. So the major challenges that firms that we've worked with sort of face or have talked about include engaging staff and incentivizing staff. So it's really talking to previous attempts that they've had that, have had fast starts, but then waned quickly. So, the need there is to capture ideas and maintain momentum and enthusiasm when you're innovating. The submission of ideas, so not having one place for all staff to see, share ideas, a lack of visibility once they're submitted and what's going on with those projects or potential projects. The managing and collating of ideas, so who has the time, who has the resource, who are the project groups, etc. The communication during the process, so has an idea been signed off? Have you got the go, no go? What's the ongoing status? So really just keeping those staff and stakeholders engaged and aware of what's happening. And that's really talking to that momentum and enthusiasm part. The justification for the project, so understanding the benefits. People have had ideas, but maybe they weren't necessarily well thought through. One way to tackle that is to include an example for people to use for their submissions. What's going to be returned, what benefits is it going to sort of deliver to the business? And then finally, and probably the biggest one, and Lisa talked to it on the previous slide, is resource demand. You need quick and easy solutions with reduction on demand of teams like the IT team if the resource isn't available. That's enough from me. So let's hear from Curt. He's going to talk through very similar issues and ways that we can think about dealing with them.
Okay, I'd like to start with a little bit about my journey and how I got here. Thank you, by the way, for the introduction, and Lisa, for what you've been doing to get this all set up. I became CEO of SRI International, which is in the heart of Silicon Valley. It's right next to Stanford University. It was started by Stanford. It's now an independent organization. When I got there, it had been in decline for 20 years. It was near bankruptcy. They were selling off the land. The building was in disrepair. There was no collaboration at all. It was pretty awful. And but it had great assets. It was a famous place. It received the first internet transmission. It created the computer mouse and the foundations of personal computing. Obviously, there were endless opportunities. We're in a great, this is the golden age if you want to be an innovator. And there were 1,000 brilliant staff. Those were the assets. But it was in really tough shape. I started out in RCA. I was at the research labs there. I was leading the high definition television program. What would have been the first internet company was Citicorp and 9X. We were bought by GE because RCA got in trouble. And then RCA sold us to SRI. So that's how I became part of this. Now, what I learned, unfortunately, when working in a big company is they didn't teach us how to be value creators. When we became part of SRI, instead of my spending millions of dollars a year on research, they expected me to earn millions of dollars. And what I discovered is I didn't know how to do that. Fortunately, I had a great friend named Norman Rowarski, and he came in and told me, and I said, Norman, what are we going to do? And he said, it's just like everything else we've ever done. We just have to learn. So I want to share with you some of the lessons that we learned. We read every book that was published at the time. None of them helped us. They were all about, some great CEO, I'm a genius, you're not, that kind of stuff. Or the things were too complicated. A billion people won't work with complicated methodologies. And we basically had to invent our own solution to solve the problem of how do you create value creation. So I left SRI and after 16 years. And the strategy when I took over was to become the premier independent source of high value innovations. We didn't want to be good. We wanted to be the best in the world at creating new major innovations. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that by basically teaching and having all of our staff, when I say all, I mean all of our staff, understand what I'm about to tell you. Very few companies train their staff in value creation. In fact, I've never met one that did it as comprehensively as we did. I think we're the only company that's ever done that, and it turns out to be transformative. So what were the results? We grew the place over 3.5 times in terms of revenue, and we created major innovations. My teams won 2 Emmys, one for high definition television, one for satellite broadcasting. Nuance, that just sold for $20 billion. Intuitive Surgical, that's a $120 billion leading robotic surgery company. And Siri, which was bought personally by Steve Jobs from us, which added about $50 to $75 billion to Apple's stock. We did well too, but Steve Jobs did the best. So what I want you to imagine, here was a place that had been failing for 20 years, the same people, because I had no money to hire or fire people, the same people, when I left, were systematically creating one multi-billion-dollar business after another. They just learned how. And what we've seen in almost every company we've been in, the problem is not the people. It's always something else. It's management or some other crazy thing that's going on in the company. And the big limitation is people are just not trained to understand value creation, which is their job. The job of every professional is to create value that has meaning for others. So with that, Lisa, let's do the first poll.
Fantastic. So we're going to run our first poll. The question that we're asking you for this one is, in your company, are these barriers to innovation lack of new innovative opportunities, employee innovative skills, company resources, company-wide collaboration, and management support. So if you could just fill in those, the answers that you feel. Do you have no barriers? Do you have low barriers? Are they a medium barrier or a serious barrier for each of those? And just hit the submit button at the bottom. And we'll just leave a minute or so to get some answers through from you all.
You have to scroll down to see all the questions.
Yeah, they're all coming through. Interesting to see if you're surprised by any of the results, Curt. I'm guessing you've run this a few times.
We have.
Okay, just a couple more seconds. Got quite a number of results in. Okay, that looks like it might be it. Whoop, no, a few more coming through.
Okay.
Okay, so let's have a look. Hopefully you can all see them on your screen. So would you like to talk through them, Curt?
Well, I think the summary here we're getting is that we're about kind of middling response. It's like 50-50 on each one of these. A few of you say no barriers, or that's pretty good. Usually there's nobody who says they don't have barriers. So I would say this is a pretty typical, very good result, but obviously serious problems for a lot of you. Okay, Lisa, I think we can move on.
Okay.
Everybody's okay?
Yeah, great.
Okay. So I've done workshops with thousands of teams all over the world. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. And here's what we discover. We discover that typically less than 25% of what people are working on would have any value at all if they completed it. Now, we don't decide that. We wouldn't do that. They decide that. We just give them a framework for them to decide what they're doing has no value for anybody. And it's usually because people, again, have no expertise in value creation, which is what their job is. So that's kind of the baseline for me. Our poll was a little more optimistic than that, but pretty similar. Okay, Lisa, back to you for our second question.
Great. So the next poll, there are only two. So this is the second and last one. So what percentage of professionals in your company would say they are value creators, know the definition for innovation, know the definition for a value proposition, are expert value creators, and can describe the company's value creation process? So we'll pop that up on screen for you. And thank you in advance for filling in this one as well. Very interested to see what everybody says. And thank you very much for everybody who's filling in the polls. They really do help. Curt, they're probably a good litmus test to see what people are thinking. Just a few more seconds while people are filling that one in. It is long. Thank you. We do appreciate you answering all the questions. Okay, let's have a look at this one.
Okay.
This one. High number of people say 25% of people in their company would say they're value creators. Does that sound about right for you, Curt?
Yep. Sure does.
Yeah. This one, again, about 25% for know the definition for innovation. There's a common theme here.
Number 4, how many about experts? We have zeros and 25%ers. And can describe the company's value creation process. Ooh, that's terrible. That's terrible. Okay, I think we get the result. I think Lisa, this is pretty consistent with what you folks measure too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we've seen the problem. We now have a better idea where we are. Now, I think that I call them laws. Basically, there are three things we look for in some form when we go into any company. The first thing is, do they know how to identify important unmet customer and market needs, or do they work on things that are interesting? I've already given that one away. I told you most companies, they work on things that really have no value for anybody. So that right there, you can see there's a potential for a big improvement. But if you don't work on important things, you're not going to get important results. The second thing is shared language and concepts for value creation. I'll give you some examples of this. Everyone here on this podcast, presumably has a different background, many different disciplines. And the one language we all should share is the language of the customer. That's the one we should share. And it's hard to find a company where everybody will understand the concepts I'm about to show you. And the third thing, and by the way, it doesn't stop progress, it just slows it down. These are barriers. There's an intellectual barrier of not sharing a common language. And the third thing is we call recurring team value creation forums. Everything that you do that has significance is done in a team. And you're synthesizing different forms of knowledge. And somehow you've got to get the teams together to do that in an efficient and effective way. If one of these three is missing, if it's not important, if you don't share common language and know what you're doing in terms of value creation, and if you don't have a way to get together systematically and effectively, you're not going to beat the competition. And again, this is what we see all over the place. These are multiplicative, they're not additive. So you all know there's 4,000 mousetraps that have been patented. As you all know, only about a dozen or so of them are actually used. The others are waste. So again, here's looking at this issue from another point of view. Imagine that, the amount of waste just from patents. So it's another indication of the problem that we have, that people really don't know how to focus on things that have value. And that leads us to the first definition. What is the definition for innovation? So I've asked this question of about 10,000 or maybe more, I don't know how many thousands, tens of thousands of executives and middle managers. What's your definition for innovation? Well, it's the creation and delivery of new customer value in the marketplace with a viable business model. So those mousetraps I just showed you, they had no viable business model. So they're inventions, they're not innovations. To be an innovation, you need to have some kind of sustainability, some kind of a business model, or else it doesn't matter. It's not an innovation. How many executives, in those thousands and thousands, have mentioned the business model? So far, 2. Now, it's not that they don't know it, they're just not thinking about it the way they should. An offering without a business model is an invention. It's not an innovation. So here's the first little gap we see. This one isn't maybe the hugest one, but it's a gap in lack of understanding. So my first tip is identify important unmet customer and market needs, identify them, and work to address them. Tip number 1. Here's the second question. What's the definition of a value proposition? Now, I'm sure everybody here uses that term all the time, but if you brought your teams together, would they agree on that definition? Again, I've done this with thousands of executives. Guess what? None of them agree. It's a Tower of Babel. They all think it's something else. They talk by each other, and the amount of inefficiency and effectiveness is terrible. And people tend to jump to really complicated things. They jump to the business model canvas. They jump to a venture pitch. They jump to the extremes where you've got all these questions. There are 40 questions on the business model canvas. That is not a good place to start. that is way too complicated to start doing an innovation. So after trying every definition you can imagine, we finally settled on these 4 questions. See what you think. The goal is to address an important unmet customer and market need with a new, compelling, and defensible approach for the offering and the business model that has superior benefits per cost when compared to the competition and the alternatives. We always start with just these 4 questions: need, approach, benefits per cost, competition. These are the fundamental questions you need to solve for any problem you're after that has meaning for others. If you can't answer these 4 questions, you're probably in trouble. And this is what we see over and over again. Now do this little test. Take one of these questions away, and then imagine discussing your new brilliant idea with somebody else. Take one away. Obviously, if you take the need away, it doesn't make sense at all, right? Obviously, if you don't have an approach, what are you talking about? If you can't specify the benefits and prove that they're superior to the competition, then you're probably, again, working in a very ineffective and probably failing way. So we start with these 4 questions, and boy, is it hard to answer these 4 questions. I've done hundreds of these. I've never gotten one right the first time, the 10th time. Some of them take hundreds of times. And here's where we see most of the failures. We call it the big A. And now listen, if you sit through any of the workshops we do, they all start out basically this way. What people want to discuss is their new brilliant idea, their approach. So we call them big A's. They're all about the approach. Curt, I want you to listen to 5 hours of my brilliant approach. The need, it's obvious. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. The benefits per cost, everybody, oh, this is, you're not going to believe how compelling this is. And there's no competition. How many times have you heard there's no competition? There's always competition. And this is what we see over and over again. So if you take away from this talk one thing, when you listen to a presentation, see if they answer all 4 of these fundamental questions. If they don't, they still haven't really started. If you can't describe your value proposition, you don't yet know what you're doing. That may be a little harsh, but it's absolutely true. And if you get these wrong, you're probably going in the wrong direction. And if you, this concept of a pivot means a 10 or 20% correction. It doesn't mean going backwards. And so often we see these presentations that have to go backwards before they can even begin. So tip number 2, use NABC value propositions to start to develop and present your new ideas. Just answering these 4 questions will put you way above just about anybody else probably in your company. It's hard. So as I mentioned, I've done hundreds of these. I've never gotten one right the first time, the 10th time. When I created the proposal to win the high definition program that eventually became part of the US standard for high definition television, with my partner, we practiced that back and forth probably thousands of times when you think about the number of sessions we went through. The week before the presentation, we practiced it from 7 in the morning until we went to bed. Back and forth, back and forth. I'd give it to him, he'd give it to me. What could go wrong? What else should we know? What if the person says no to this? What's the answer to that? Back and forth, pitching practice. So this is a really, fundamental thing. Now, again, imagine you had the business model canvas as your framework. You couldn't pitch that back and forth. It's too complicated. But you can remember these 4 questions. You can pitch them, and you should realize if you can't answer these 4 questions, you still haven't figured out what to do. So tip number 3, iterate intensely with real-time feedback. Give your presentation to as many people as you can and start by answering these fundamental questions. Now, as I said, no matter how smart you are, you're not smart enough alone today to do these things. Whether you're Musk or Steve Jobs, somehow you've got to synthesize all the knowledge together to solve these really big, important problems. So we call these value creation forums. And at SRI, we'd hold these every 2 to 4 weeks. Everybody in the company, including me, would stand up and give a 5-minute NABC value proposition pitch, and we'd get feedback. And the presenter would be, they'd be quiet, and no arguing back, all respectful, all positive, all constructive, no negatives at all. And what we would help the person do is by reframing their value proposition, help them answer those questions faster than they ever could alone. So first off, what's good? Keep it. Don't forget that. What could you improve? There's some improvement ideas. Eyes of the end user and eyes of the investor or funder. We looked at it from different points of view, And also, there were 5 or 6 teams in these meetings. So you were listening to 5 or 6 short value propositions. And inevitably, some people did a good job, other people didn't. And you learned from that. You compared one presentation to another. If you do this, you'll be amazed at how fast you improve because you're learning from some of the smartest people you've got in your company. So tip number 4, use recurring value creation forums to learn and improve faster than the competition. That's what we do. And I'll tell you, it's like magic if you can get your team to do this. And it only takes an hour and a half every couple of weeks. And the improvement you'll get will be enormous. People will learn how to become value creators. They'll learn not just the fundamentals that I'm talking about in this talk, they'll become, over time, really sophisticated, deeply knowledge value creators and innovators. Here's another thought. So if you were to show up at your typical management meeting and you gave a value proposition that started out with NABC, I guarantee you it's probably the best presentation at the entire meeting. Why do I say that? Because I've been in thousands of these meetings. And when people answer these questions, everybody notices it. Was the presentation concise? Was it quantitative? People always say bigger, better, faster, cheaper. That doesn't make any sense. Nobody knows what bigger, better, faster, cheaper is. Quantify and make it compelling. Really nail it so that you've got all the answers to these 4 questions and more, of course, but at least to these 4 questions. I guarantee you, if you show up and you give presentations like this, everyone will notice because they so rarely see presentations of this quality. So tip number 5, demonstrate results to your management. Prove that you can do this. Prove that you're answering the fundamental questions every manager knows they need, but they generally don't have a framework. And if you show up with one, you go to the head of the class. So one question is, I'm giving you just kind of the 5 tips today, so it's not the whole story, but have these tips helped other people? Well, the answer to that is absolutely yes. Not only did it transform SRI, it's transforming the university that's on my behind me here on my screen, Worcester Polytech, which is a university in America. It's a project-based school. We're teaching the students value creation. Northeastern, Michigan, ASU, all over the United States in terms of universities, but also these famous companies. I don't have to read through you all. And also famous funding agencies like the National Research Foundation in Singapore, and NSF in America, DARPA, lots of different places. And yes, this profoundly helps people because at the most basic level, it focuses people on the fundamental questions that always have to be answered no matter what you're doing. If you're developing value for others, you must at least answer those 4 questions before trying to build something or go beyond, and start spending serious amounts of money. And most people don't do that. If you do that, it's transformative. So at Samsung, for example, they now everything starts with an NABC value proposition so that they can communicate with each other effectively. So here in summary, quickly, 5 tips. Identify important unmet customer and market needs. Most people focus on interesting things that don't matter. Don't make that mistake. The second is start with the fundamentals. Start with NABC value propositions. You can use different words if you want. That's not the point. The point is start with the fundamentals before you start getting all confused trying to answer, like with the business model canvas. There's nothing wrong with the business model canvas. It's just a checklist. It's too complicated. Don't start there. Start with the fundamentals and then build up to answer all the questions you have to create an innovation. Iterate intensely. Again, nobody's smart enough alone. Team up with your buddies and practice back and forth, back and forth. How do we answer these questions better? How can we do a better job? If you can, hold value creation forums. Get together every 2 weeks with 5 or 6 teams. Give your value proposition and help each other learn and improve fast and share ideas. That's how we got started. And that is it's the fastest way we've discovered that you can learn how to become an effective value creator. And the last thing is find an opportunity to present your idea using this kind of framework with this kind of iteration to your management and demonstrate to them the power of being able to understand these few fundamental ideas. Now, here's a critical point. Do you need permission from anybody to do this? No, you need no permission. You don't need money. All you need is to start. And the way we started at SRI that transformed me, transformed SRI, and has transformed a lot of other organizations is you get a buddy and you start doing it. And then you find other colleagues and you bring them together. And then you start meeting every couple of weeks to share ideas and improve. When people ask me, what kind of resources do you need? I said, pizza and Coke help. Pizza and Coke always help. But that's all you need. If you have pizza and Coke money, you can do this. And you can become a profoundly, profoundly better value creator. So I want to end again. So when I walk into a company, the first thing I'm looking for is, do they talk about and have a way to identify important opportunities as opposed to interesting ones? If they don't, they're not going to work. The second is, do they share language like we're talking about here? I gave you only a couple examples, and there's a few more that are important. If they don't, I know it's not going to be an efficient, effective place. They're going to be squabbling all the time about, people's ideas. And the truth is, they're not going to address all of the fundamental questions in their value propositions. And the last thing is, do they have a way to learn fast? The world is profoundly competitive. And you have to go at the speed of light. Think what Musk does, the intensity with which he iterates, the intensity. That's who you're competing with, people like that. So if you don't have a way to do that, you're at a severe disadvantage. The good news is, if you do these things, even a little bit, the improvement you'll see will be enormous. You'll be enormously impressed at how fast you can move in the performance improvements that you'll see. So with that, that's me. So Lisa, do we stop here for a moment, or what do we do?
I think we'll move straight on to you introducing I4I, if you'd like to.
Yeah. So it's what I do now is I'm a professor at 2 universities, and we hold workshops with companies all over the world. So if you're interested in today, there are lots of places you can interact with us. For example, on Coursera, there's a free online course that teaches the kinds of stuff that I'm talking about today and a lot more, with demonstrations and people actually giving pictures and that sort of thing. So if you're interested, that's a really great place to start. It'll take you an hour and a half if you go through the whole thing. But it's a good solid introduction. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. You can always get a hold of me there with my email. So you can email me if you're interested, and I follow up. And there's lots of literature. As Lisa mentioned, I wrote a top 10 business book. And there's a nice summary of what we do, a Harvard Business Review article I wrote. So if you're interested, you can start on LinkedIn. We can have a dialogue back and forth about issues you see, improvements we could all make. So I'd love to do that with everybody. It's about learning. It's about improving. It's about how do we get better. And by the way, just one last thing. Why do I do this? The reason I do this now, after my career at SRI, I didn't have to work. I did it because I saw what this does for people. People who learn these skills have their lives transformed. They have their lives transformed. If I worked for RCA or GE my entire career and I got to be 55 years old, I probably would have been reorganized 5 times and kicked out at some point, and I never would have worked again. The people at SRI and the other places who learn these things can work for as long as they want. They can because the people who understand these things and create value, it's the most valuable skill that a professional can have. And when you have this skill, you can work for as long as you want to, not someone else. So stay in touch. I'd love to continue the dialogue. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Curt. I'm pumped. I feel like that was a great end there. I thought, yeah, that you're clearly very passionate. And yeah, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. It's not over yet though. We still would like to just give you a quick introduction to Fliplet as well. And we've got a special giveaway. And then there's an opportunity to share your details with us and fill in a survey. And obviously we've got a few questions that have come through as well that we'd love to answer. They will be for Curt. So please do continue to add any questions that may have come up for you during the session. So I'll hand over now to Dave and Kyle, who are going to tell you more.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks, Curt, for all your insightful knowledge over the last half an hour or so. It's really interesting actually to hear it from that perspective. So I'm sure everyone else has gained some valuable knowledge. So in terms of Fliplet, so we are a low-code, no-code app development platform. Might sound really technical, but this is exactly what we're not. So the benefit of Fliplet is that you don't have to be a technical whiz, a technical know-how to build and design, whether it's mobile or web solutions that work for your organization, for your marketplace. And we predominantly focus on the legal market, but we do serve a number of non-legal businesses, and we have ambition to grow into many more across the next 12, 18 months as we branch out to other areas as well. So say what we've done over the years is we've created a number of templates that firms can pick up, edit and launch with minimal technical, I say, if any, know-how required. And one in particular, Kyle will be talking through shortly, which is our innovation management solution. But what I'll now talk about is the problems that Fliplet actually solve for organizations. So Fliplet allows organizations to collaborate and work together to create solutions either from the ground up or utilizing our pre-built templates. The rapid build time behind Fliplet is a key benefit where organizations historically might outsource to an agency and go to and fro, and they have very little control. And these projects often can take 3, 6, 9, 12 months, whereas we can cram a lot of that work into just a few weeks because you're in full control of what you're doing. Promotion innovation is absolutely the heart of what we do. You know, you can create that innovation culture in your business by utilizing our solution or utilizing the knowledge that you've got to build out specific needs and requirements that the business may be coming to you to ask for. And pricing. So, you know, we work with organizations either on a single point solution where they may go, hey, we've got a very big requirement we need. Can you support us in it? Have you got something that we can build out of the box? Others turn around and go, actually, as an organization, we need to be more agile. We need to be more technology first. And we want to be able to build out multiple mobile or web solutions. So they can then go ahead with our unlimited app plan. So again, we've got price to fit all. And then finally, less reliance on IT. You know, no longer is there a massive onus on IT to take and lead these projects, but actually often we see innovation departments really at the heart of these projects, working with their project managers and other departments across the business to ensure that they can deliver on the expectations that they have as an organization. But for now, I'll pass you back over to Kyle, who's going to talk about our innovation management solution.
Thank you, Dave. So you can see here a small selection of screenshots from the innovation template. And really this template allows you to uncover all ideas. So from the not so good through to the great. There could be net new ideas from staff or related to challenges that you've provided, which, you know, you could include the need. So you can see on the left-hand screenshot there, there's an example of some challenges that business is facing. And, you know, I would suggest adding an example of a submission of an idea so that people understand what to include. So is it the need, the approach, the benefits that Curt was alluding to earlier. It allows for collation of ideas and stakeholders. So multiple people might have similar challenges or idea solutions that they could work together on. It could also help you prioritize them. But you can see there on the third screenshot, after we've looked at remote working, what submissions have already been made. Do I like those? It talks to the interactivity within the app, so you can comment, like, have personalized notifications. And that really enables you to keep the audience engaged and addresses the sort of fast start but wane scenario that I talked about earlier on. In terms of taking ownership, you can create project groups within the template, so you can allow them to communicate, update the wider audience, and also, you know, have a close communication with themselves. And you can track returns on the project within the app as well. So what are your objectives, your KPIs? Are you tracking against those? Are you meeting them? In terms of apps built as a result of firms using an innovation template, or an innovation app rather, based on the template itself, I'm just going to go through a couple of examples. So the first one is a key info on business services app. So basically sharing knowledge. And this allowed staff to speak about other areas of the business and its capabilities in client meetings, and generated leads using form submissions. So really helping marketing, etc., generate leads. Second is capacity management and work allocation app. This replaced a spreadsheet, so a very archaic way of working, and it included a directory which enabled managers effectively to allocate work to their team based on the capacity of their current workload and their subject area, their priorities, their interests, etc. And third one is will writing support. So this was a way for clients to submit critical information from the comfort of their own home. It's reducing email and phone traffic into the team, ensured that important information is collected first time, so you have mandatory fields, etc. And really ultimately led to an improved client experience and efficiencies in the will application process. It was a need that came around due to COVID, but it was so successful that it became sort of the new process long term. And then just a couple of examples of some award winners that we've worked with. So first is Mills and Reeve, who were the winner of the KM Innovation Award with their What the Tech app. This app had over 500 users engaged with it in the first 2 months. All of the information was previously conveyed through lengthy FAQ documents, and the app allowed for reduction in demand on innovation, on the reduction in demand on the tech team, decrease in pressure on time-stretched partners. It was easy to access, easy to digest technology. It had solutions, training, and briefings within the app. Second one I'm going to talk around is the Eversheds Open House. So this was the gold winner of Communicate Magazine's Internal Comms and Engagement Awards in the COVID-19 category. That's a mouthful. And this app was used to connect staff working remotely, and it provided a place for employees to talk informally, share ideas and a range of non-work, related topics, etc. During that challenging period of a few years ago, maybe still facing now. But Dave, can you tell us about the innovation workshops?
Of course. So what we're looking to do is we want to ensure that innovation continues to become an integral part of the business we work with as we look forward towards 2022 and beyond in this year. And part of our remit really as an organisation is to help build value for our clients and make sure their experience is positive. So what we're looking to do is ensure that partnership grows from day one, and engagement with each of our clients gets better and better over time. So what we've decided to do off the back of this webinar is to introduce a free innovation workshop to a number of clients, and we are limiting it. So you'll see in the next slide, there is a sign up. So get your phones ready to scan the QR code for that. But it's going to split into sort of 4 sections as part of this. So the first part really is the problem brainstorming, as we've called it. So in this part, what we're looking to do is discuss the challenges that your organization faces when it comes to innovation. So, whichever stakeholders are going to be on that conversation, we can then share those challenges, and then we can understand really what you've got in your current technology stack, which maybe works, and maybe identify how things could be done better, which brings us nicely onto the ideation or the solution ideation section, which is, we will work together, one of our consultants and yourselves, to identify which problem is deemed the most critical in the organization, and analyze the pros and cons of each of these challenges you face in order to identify which of those reaches the top of the list. Next part is the features. So the aim is then on a high level basis to identify what features are the most important to making the solution most successful it can be for your organization. So essentially by laying the foundations of these expected outcomes, that will help us nicely lead to Fliplet Studios. That's the platform we use to begin bringing some of these ideas to life with you. We'll then spend a bit of time together prototyping, so using Fliplet to build the skeleton structure of how you want your app to maybe function or your solution to work. We then aim to pass any knowledge we've got on the platform on to you and your colleagues, and then you can obviously use that moving forwards as a starting point. And obviously from our perspective, we see this as a really good opportunity for our clients and our prospective clients to put a plan into place how they really want to achieve those innovation goals as an organisation. Lisa, if you can flick onto the next slide for us, perfect. So this is what I was talking about earlier. If you can get your devices out, we'll also drop a link in on the chat for you now. If you want to register some interest in one of the innovation workshops, I say grab your phone, read the code on there, and that should bring you to our website. We've obviously got 30 plus organisations on this call, so there's not enough space for all of you. So as I say, we are limited to 10 for the time being on a first come, first serve basis. So what I'll do, I'll leave this QR code up for just a few more seconds whilst we have sort of got you guys having a look at that. Lisa mentioned at the very start, we have got a Q&A coming up shortly, which we'll be running in a moment. So again, keep your phones out again, as we have got another QR code where we want to gather some feedback from you in terms of how this has gone today, what maybe you'd look for in future. And hopefully, I think we will also add the link to that afterwards as well. So I'll give you a couple more seconds to just get that on your phone or your devices. Hopefully, Kate has dropped the link into the chat. I can't see from where I am, but I'm guessing she has.
I've just dropped it in.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Great. So you can always get in touch with us if you'd like to find out more about that as well. So now we've reached the Q&A section. As I mentioned earlier, we have a little survey. We'd love you to let us know what you thought of today, what you thought of the speakers, particularly how you can tell Curt how great he was, and also to give us any feedback on the session, anything you might be interested to hear from us in future. And also if you'd like us to get in touch with you, there's a selection. You can say, I'd like Curt to get in touch, Fliplet, or both. So please do let us know your thoughts. But now let's head over to Kate. Kate, have we had some questions come in?
Yes, we've had a few. I know one was asked in the chat that Curt has already responded to, but just in case anyone hasn't seen that response, maybe Curt would like to go over that again. The question was, if you push the NABC model too early in the innovation process, is there a risk of killing off the creativity culture?
No, actually, it enhances it. We discovered that in every company we worked in. It's just a framework. It's just basically saying to people, we're not telling people what ideas, what innovations to do. We're basically just having a common understanding that eventually we better be able to answer at least those 4 questions before we jump. One of the biggest mistakes we see is people jumping. They say, I'm going to become an entrepreneur, I'm going to become an innovator, without addressing the fundamental question. Now, that really does inhibit people. That's not a good way to proceed. No, we discovered it's really an innovation enhancer because it gives people just enough guidance without telling them what to do.
That's great, thank you. We have another question. How do we manage the situation internally if management are preventing doing innovation for future progress?
Well, again, I think you have to take control of your own career. If it really is a hostile environment, you better move to someplace else. Now, what's interesting is when we developed these ideas, I was in a different part of SRI. I was in the Princeton laboratories. I wasn't in the main center, which is in California, right next to Stanford. And we had our own senior vice president for marketing, and he came to see me one day and he said, Curt, we don't think what you're doing has any value for the company. You're on your own. I said, thank you very much. And we just started doing this. We just used this methodology. We started to grow. I took over that part of the company. We were growing at over 20% per year. And eventually, I think they promoted me because I was taking over the company, because every time another team got in trouble, we brought them in, we gave them these skills, and they started to grow. So that's how we did it. We had no money, we had no permission, no government, no management support. You don't need it. You just get started. And again, if they actively discourage you from doing this, then I think you have to go somewhere else.
Thank you. How do you distinguish between something truly innovative and just an improvement on something?
Well, you need to do both, of course. Continuous improvement is essential if you're in a company. But again, there are dozens and dozens of things you can do. And part of it is a mindset about sorting through the things that can really make a difference. One measure of significance is the number of people that are impacted by your improvement, the magnitude of it, and how long it sticks around. So some things, like the wheel, are really important, and they've stuck around, for thousands of years. Most innovations don't last that long, but they get absorbed into other things. But we were always trying to, have a disciplined thought process. So you'd think, okay, here's an incremental improvement we can make. Let's discuss that. Let's create the value proposition for that, and let's see if it really makes sense. Again, because there isn't a disciplined process in most companies, you would be amazed if you run the kind of workshops we do at how most of the stuff just goes away. On the other side, Again, as I said, people have never been the problem in the companies we've been in. When you give them a framework and a way to get feedback and reframing and collaboration, it's absolutely amazing what they come up with.
Thank you. How do we advertise our innovation internally and externally to customers?
Well, if I were as a CEO, I advertised it every which way I could. I made it part of every speech I gave. It's on our website. It was if you came to SRI when I was CEO, the first thing you do would go through a 3-day workshop where you'd learn these things and you'd work on your project. So it was our competitive advantage. I think it's the competitive advantage. I mean, what's Musk's competitive advantage? He knows how to innovate, right? That's his competitive advantage. And he can go from one thing to another. He knows how to do this. Well, most people comes from, I mean, we were hiring PhDs from Stanford and Berkeley and Harvard and Caltech. None of them knew how to do this when they came to us. Why would you assume people would know how to do this? Solving problems is what you learn in college. Solving problems that have meaning for others is something you have to learn later on in life. And so why would you leave that to chance? The first thing you would do in a company, you should do in a company, is give these skills to your employees. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's just something that you ought to do. And again, if your management doesn't do that, you should do it. Take control of your career.
The next question I was going to ask, how do you get people on the same page? So thinking differently, but along the same lines.
Well, again, you have to start. So when I go into a company, I don't recommend they're doing this with everybody all at once. Inevitably, in every company, you'll find people who want to learn, who want to improve, who want to make a bigger impact, who realize they need these skills, and you start with them. Those are the early adopters, the beachheads, so to speak, in the company. And typically, you can think in a company, there are 3 categories of people. There's a third who wants to do this. There's a third who are going to watch and see if it works, and then they'll join. And maybe a third that you're going to have a problem with. So you start with the third that are the early adopters. You put a team together and you start demonstrating performance. That's what we did. That's what we've done everywhere, every company we've gone into.
That's great. And do you have any tips or advice on being efficient and thoughtful about turning opportunities into revenue?
Yeah. So yes, of course. I mean, that's what this is all about. So innovation is about learning, seeking, searching, creating, and improving. It's all about learning in a different. It's learning directed to solving problems that have meaning for others. And then that is what this methodology is all about. How do you learn as efficiently and effectively as you can to beat the competition? And I would challenge anybody to come up with a more efficient process. I'm not saying there isn't one. I'm just saying we've compared what we're doing against every other methodology you can think of. And I think what we are doing here is the most efficient, effective way for people to learn and achieve fast that I've seen. By the way, if any of your listeners, think of it differently, I'd love to have this discussion with them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We're coming up to the hour. I just want to say thank you so much to Curt for joining us. We're so appreciative of your time and your invaluable insights. I certainly have learned a lot today. Also, a very quick thank you to Dave and Carl, my colleagues, for joining me. And just if you're interested in any future webinars, you can go to fliplet.com/webinars. And we have one next week around driving talent acquisition and retention using technology. But again, thank you, Curt. And I wish everybody a fantastic afternoon or morning wherever you are.
Thank you.